Let's talk now to Tony Agbons, researcher, senior lecturer, Anglia Ruskin University in the British capital, London. Good morning to you, Dr. Agbons. Thank you for your time, as always.
Good morning, Ladi. And how is Lagos?
Well, Lagos is, as you would expect, Lagos is slightly chaotic, but we're getting on with it. Let's start off with this Partygate issue, which gripped London and Britain yesterday. It was an unusual spectacle to see a former prime minister, being grilled on national television by his colleagues of mostly the same party over an issue that perhaps some would say, is now really mute, is irrelevant because he's no longer in office. What did you make of it?
Yeah, thank you, Ladi. In fact, I was coming back from work yesterday. I was watching the grilling of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the British Parliament, facing the Privilege Committee. And I was just smiling and I was happy. That is the beauty of democracy, where leaders are accountable, to the people they lead. And it just goes to show how the British remain the bastion of democracy in the world. To see a former prime minister for over 3 hours yesterday, it was being grilled. And for UK citizens, that is what we are happy about. And everybody loved the scene. And everyone is taking an example on how to be accountable to the people you are leading. And it's not just a case of making one rule for a group of people and another set of rules for the others, for the citizens of the country. So it was really good. And to be honest, Boris Johnson, he did give his best shot. He's a very articulate, person. He was trying to defend himself. And he stands the risk of even being recalled from the parliament. And that may just be the end of his political career, like you alluded to.
Yeah, now let's go to the other issues that are related one way or the other, because Boris Johnson was the person who started Britain's robust support for Ukraine following the invasion by Russia. But then, he made 2 trips to Kiev to visit with President Zelensky. Of course, by the time President Zelensky was to come to London, he was no longer prime minister. But then Mr. Zelensky made a point of making sure he saw him. Now, Prince William, the heir to the throne, has gone not to Ukraine, but to the border between Ukraine and Poland to meet with refugees and British soldiers who are in Poland. Is that, raising the stakes, do you think, of British involvement in this war, now that the royals, it's no longer a political thing, the royals are now involved themselves?
Absolutely. It does raise the stakes, and Prince William, the heir to the British throne, seeing him on global television yesterday, report, this kind of visit is good for the optics, and is kind of an inspiration even to the Ukrainian soldiers and friends and allies of Ukraine, to see that not just the British government, even the British monarchy is very, very much in support of what is going on. So that visit yesterday, for me, diplomatically, it will say that it carries a lot of weight, and I believe it will also further send a message to the aggressors, that is talking about Russia now, that British support, British government support for the Ukrainian cause is not going to wane very soon. If I was looking at some analysis yesterday, and I found that since this crisis began in February 2022, the UK government has spent more than $23.9 billion by way of assistance, to Ukraine already. So that is a massive amount of assistance that the UK government, second only to the United States, who have given assistance of about $29 billion to Ukraine. So it was very good for the optics, and I believe that Prince William that visit is just a reflection of the support that the UK government and UK citizens are giving to Ukraine.
Let's look at the other side, of course, when you mentioned the Russians, and one wants to find out: were you surprised by the statement coming from the Russian Deputy Defense Minister, Mr. Rybkov, where he talked about the risk of nuclear confrontation, being the closest it had been in decades, and he gave two reasons. The first was, that Russia has pulled out of the START treaty, the new START treaty, at least for the moment. And then secondly, that incident that happened involving the drone and the Russian fighter jets. We also saw the Russian defense minister giving medals of honor to the pilots that flew the jets that intercepted that drone. Is it, do you think, possibility that this nuclear confrontation is close? And if so, if the U.S. does get involved in any kind of confrontation with Russia, the British are going to be pulled in, no doubt, because where America goes, Britain goes.
You are very correct, spot on, Larry. The truth of the matter is that the risk of this confrontation going nuclear is very, very high at the moment. Just last week, the United Britain did supply some military hardware and accessories to Ukraine, and some of these accessories contain depleted uranium, referred to as DU. So that actually is what is making the Russians apprehensive at this time, because being radioactive materials, the Russians have said that once Ukraine gets these equipment and accessories, they may likely use it. These accessories, by their nature, they can penetrate armored vehicles and armored cars and can do a lot of damage. It's got radioactive power as well. So these are some of the fears that Russians are having, and rightly so. So, but we just hope, the humanity side of us just hope that nuclear artillery and nuclear materials are not used for conflict. So the Russians are very, very correct to say that the risk of a nuclear war happening, is at its highest peak in the last 10 years. So we like analysts as we are just watching and hoping that the Americans don't come in, and like you said, the UK is not dragged in. Then an all-out nuclear crisis will now happen. So we hope it doesn't get there.
Let's look at the background to all of this as well, Dr. Agbons. The UK, Australia, and the US, I believe it was maybe 2 weeks ago now, signed the AUKUS Pact, which also involves nuclear-powered submarines, which Australia will get. Either using British technology to be built by the Americans or using American technology to be built by the British. But that would make Australia the 7th country in the world that had access to these kinds of weapons. I'm talking about nuclear-powered submarines. The UK is involved in that as well, along with the United States. And all of this, is also part of the bigger picture of containing Russia and China, who, by the way, had a meeting between Monday and yesterday. The Chinese president left for home yesterday. What do you make of all of this in the mix? I mean, the meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin on one hand, and then this AUKUS Pact.
Yeah, I think when you look at the global order now, first of all, I just want to say that there is a scare in the Committee of Nations. Should Russia win this war, then there's also a possibility that China may also annex Taiwan. So there is that geopolitical arrangement that NATO, the US, the West, they are really scared of. So that is on one side. Then on the flip side, the alignment you talked about between Australia, Canada, the US, the UK, is a military shielding. So everybody wants to get prepared because, look, to be honest, nobody expected that in 2022, 2023, a sovereign nation will be attacked, and aggressively, being destroyed like we are having now. Nobody expected that this will happen. But we've gone past the days of empires and domains when kings and emperors will just go and attack another land. So when you look at the background you gave, Australia joining the League of this nuclear acquisition and all that, I think it's just to prepare for the rainy day. And it is very much in their right to do so. Now, coming back to China, the Chinese president has spent the last 3 days, he just left for home yesterday, in Moscow. It was a show of friendship and support, even though China is trying to say that they are neutral in this war, but they are not neutral. You will recall that on the 24th of February, on the first anniversary of this war, China did release a 12-point peace plan, which the West and Ukraine rejected. Although 5 of the plans were okay, but the other 7 were just wishy-washy. So they rejected it because that plan, the framework of that plan is that Russia can annex the territory that it currently occupies in Ukraine, which that does not augur well with Ukraine and the West at all. So when you see all this, the Russians and the Chinese, they are trying to, they just want to be disruptors. They believe that the Americans and the West, have been, reigning and running the show. So they want, to come together. You can see the friendship very organic between President Xi Jinping and analysts have said they've met over 40 times since both of them came to power. So they have that friendship within them, and their alliance at the moment is very strong.
Indeed. Dr. Agbons, as always, thank you for the perspective, interesting views. Thank you, and do have a pleasant day ahead.
And you too, Ladi. Have a great day.